Hi everyone, and welcome to another Destiny Movie Night Hangout. And today we're going to discuss the movie Noah. And just before we start and before we introduce you to our guests, I wanted to remind you that you can ask a question during the live session by using the Q&A app on this Google event. Right, so with us tonight we have Valentin from Slovenia. Hi Valentin.
Hi.
And we have Peter from the Netherlands. Hey, Peter.
Hi.
Awesome. So tonight we're going to discuss the movie Noah, and we're going to focus on 2 points: the rebirth of humans and our belief systems. For those who haven't watched this movie, it tells us a version about the Noah's Ark and the process of him to build an ark once he got kind of a message from the creator saying that the water were going to wash out the men on earth. And so he starts his mission of building this ark to save the innocent on earth, which are the animals. And during this journey, he actually faces himself, he faces his own self-will, and he faces his family. And he ends up in this inner conflict between the good and the evil and the creator's will and what he has done. And what, well, you're going to see in the movie anyways. But so today, as I was saying before, we're going to focus on these 2 points in terms of our birth as human beings on Earth, our changing process, and also our belief systems that still hold us back to these ideas and beliefs that we have about the place where we live in, this earth. Right, so guys, I'm going to start with our first question just to open up the session. And what was the main point in the movie that resonated with your own process? You want to go ahead, Peter?
Yes, that's fine. Actually, when I started looking at the movie, I was a little bit surprised because, of course, if you see the title, you have some kind of expectation. And from the other side, even if it's very far away, I had a Christian education. So watching the movie, you try to remember how the story was in the Bible, and you see discrepancies there. So I was a little bit surprised about that. But okay, I went on watching the movie, and of course I also watched it from a perspective comparing it with the process I'm walking myself, and I had several normally when you start from how the Bible most of the times is interpreted, we have a God which is a good thing that only does good things. That's also the way the church tries to promote that. And if we look to the movie, we see that there is a kind of evil God acting there, which actually resembles much more how things really work in the world, with all the wars we have and the justice, which is not justice if you look properly at how things go, etc. So that was the different points that popped up to me while watching the movie. And also the lack of taking your own responsibility was a strong point. That is something that definitely is a point of attention for whole humanity. We tend to point to the others, we tend to blame others, but we fail to look at ourselves and to see what we can do ourselves in order to eventually change the world. So that is what I mainly took from watching this movie.
Great, Peter. I can resonate with those points as well. Valentin, what do you have to say about it?
Yeah, what I noticed about the movie is that it was created very realistically. So I watched a lot of movies with similar scenarios, but this one, like building the ark, it was very big, large, from wood and so on. And this surprised me how the directors of the movie were able to create such impression that like this event actually happened in this world, and how would it actually look like to create such an arc. And then, of course, like Peter said, where we are trying to kill the human physical bodies as the vessels of the directive principles of the living beings who are within the bodies and their mind patterns and so on. So nobody gives a care about changing the mind patterns, the behavior patterns of the people, simply just to destroy them. And there was no solution how to ensure that when every humans would be, the bad humans would be killed, how to ensure that their minds or their behavior patterns would not get corrupted again. What would be the solution, the long-term solutions? And so the movie did not give any solutions about this point.
Very cool, Valentin, and hopefully, well, that's what we're going to discuss on this hangout. So we talk about the problems, and we also bring solutions. So, right, actually, as you were saying, Valentin and Peter, Noah is convinced that everything must be destroyed to start again. But actually, looking at the history, how do you say that actually we are the proof that such approach is not viable and it's not even self-honest? You want to go ahead, Peter or Valentin?
I will want to go ahead. Before, I was in church listening to especially the story of Noah, and also my grandfather used to read from the Bible. And every time I listened to this story, there was a kind of short in my head that said there's something that doesn't work there. There's something wrong there about this story, because I imagined the whole world being flooded, which was in my imagination something that was not possible. So I skipped this as being a true scenario and thought by myself, okay, what is the point of flooding just a part of the world? Because we are living over all the world, so humans are everywhere. So is it just eradicating a species or eradicating a race or whatever it is? I was starting to think in all kinds of directions, so I couldn't sum up the real practical point there. And of course, when I grew older, I understood that it maybe was a symbolism more than an actual thing. The whole Bible, of course, is a collection of symbols, and we don't have to take as the real stuff. I also found out it was not the way to work, because what the movie suggests is that we should just terminate the human race in order to get rid of the evil thing that is on the planet. And to be honest, there was a certain point in my life, especially at the beginning when starting investigating on the Destiny material, that I thought, okay, my goodness, are we so bad as humans? How can we clear this up? How can we do it? The only way to do this is just to exterminate ourselves, to go away from the planet. We are visitors here on the planet. We don't even belong here, so go away. That was my thought. And what happened enough, soon enough, I started to read a lot of solutions I could apply to myself in order to solve this problem. And there it started to get really interesting. So getting into the right materials, getting to know myself especially, that was the really interesting point. All kind of dimensions and layers. I started to see that there are real openings, that I can change myself into a better person that is considering his environment, himself in this environment, the way I act, I'm saying, I'm doing. So that definitely was a great point of discovery. So it was interesting that it already started in my youth, and finally it was as if I was freed from a burden that I took with me for many, many years until the age of, what is it, almost 40 years old. And finally I found question or answers to very important questions in my life. So yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing, Peter. That's amazing. I mean, I haven't gone through that process that specifically because I always had this view that humans were great and we could do so many things together. But actually, at some point in my life, when I saw seeing that sometimes relationships don't work and how people can be mean and evil, even myself, how I can react to others, and it actually helped myself as well to look at what I was doing initially, and then to bring those points into myself and to understand what it means to self-purify, like what it means to clean myself from all these ideas that I have created. And I was following those ideas, like I was in this loop of self-judgment, and immediately it's projected towards the world, towards other humans, and we start even deepening the problem instead of realizing, hey, wait a second, if we are doing this to ourselves, we will be able to clean this. So as I said, the Noah's Ark, and that's actually going to be the point of our next question, how we can move from the story to actually apply it in a direction that is more solutions driven, rather than kind of seeing us as the victims of whatever decision a God image would make. So actually we're going to go to the second question, and Valentin, so as I was saying before, in terms of seeing beyond the fable, this story can be very real and applicable as a self-reflection process to see whether we have in any way changed who we are as human beings, as our human nature. So from your perspective, and since you've been walking the Desteni process, what do you see have been missed? Why are we still the same greedy, or like most of the times greedy evil beings that were actually wiped out during Noah's time?
Yeah, so the similar event that reminds me when not watching the movie Noah is also the World War, where there was like definition that Jews were the evil beings in this world, that they have to be eradicated, and not to look at the whole perspective as how we as humanity can work together and find a practical solution. It was about power, about influence. And so when you kill someone or some race or something, then you just create a point of revenge, and then you just perpetuate this violence. So the solution would be to stop pulling the past in this moment for the past events to influence us, but to be here in this moment and to treat everyone equally, to forgive all the resentment or the emotions or the thoughts that separate us, that define us as something more important or less important, to equalize ourselves, to respect every living being as equals. And this can be achieved only with changing our mind patterns. So if I would want to be a part of the solution, I have to change my own mind patterns. We cannot wait for some savior to have the new flood or to some magical being to transform us to higher dimensions, or for the aliens to come and to bring us to some other planets. The opportunity is here in this moment to stop our mind, our thoughts that pulls us into the past, and to stop participating in the past, to practically live here in this moment, and to see how we can live here together and support each other and share the planetary resources equally. So this would be the solution.
Awesome, Valentin. That actually, it's a very good point when you mentioned this point of oneness and equality, which is exactly the main Destiny principles that we have been living and applying in our daily lives. And actually, while I was listening to you, I thought that maybe, well, initially my thought was like, yes, it's easier said than done, which can be something that can pop up in our audience. But in fact, it is not, because not doing that, that's the easy way out. Simply leaving the patterns, repeat the past, and thinking that that this is who we are. But the process of recreating ourselves, of having the ability to change, to recognize that, well, if this method hasn't worked in the past because we came now to the exact same point of conflict, then that's something that needs to change, so the end result is also different. And absolutely, the oneness and equality point where we see each other as ourselves, and we recognize as well that any separation that exists, it's a mind point. It's something that can be changed. It's not actually real. It doesn't have to exist, because we are here, one world, and the people here together to coexist. So thank you so much for sharing that, and to also remind ourselves of that, because the news usually shows the opposite. So we definitely need to bring those principles up. Right, so I was having a look and following what you said, Valentin, that it's easier, and more often than not, we actually wait for a savior to come and help us, such as a god, or in this case, even during the movie, the family of Noah was waiting for Noah to say what to do and what not. So, Peter, if there is no savior that comes here and to save ourselves, so what happens if we do not change, and are we able to save ourselves?
No way. So there is no way that if we do not act, we will remain the same, and we'll just circle in our patterns over and over again, which was that is what we have done as humanity for a couple of thousands of years now. So if we look at the period that the Bible exists, about 2,000 years, if you look at the history of humankind, what you see is that we are circling in patterns and repeating again and again and again the same patterns. And that is also on a micro level. If you start to look at yourself, it is amazing to find out that you are repeating a lot of patterns, especially the bad habits. And if you say that in the context of what we're talking about tonight, it is especially the fact that you really quickly start to blame others if something goes wrong, that you are trying to defeat bad things with violence instead of doing it in a constructive way, etc. So that is definitely something. The only way out of it is to stop those patterns, is to recognize that you are living in circles, in repeating things, and only if you recognize them and effectively can stop them, then you will be able to work towards a change, and then definitely we will be able to get out of this horrible loop of events repeating themselves over and over again. And just to go back to the movie, well, watching to the movie, I remember that actually expected it. There will be no flood, and we will not have to use the ark, etc. And humankind will still remain, and they will see that there's another kind of solution. But of course, the movie didn't go that direction, because it had to tell the real story of how humankind is acting in those situations. And eradicating the human race which didn't work at the end because we still had the same situation, which was a little bit disappointing in the context of finding a solution towards the problem that was actually presented in the movie. Yeah, well, there was no real solution offered, and that is actually for most of the interesting movies. You can watch to touch specific topics that at the end there is no real solution offered, and that's where you pop in yourself, and of course the whole Desteni pops in and allows you to find the tools that you can use in a practical, very practical way to study yourself, to establish how you work as a person, how you can find your emotions, feelings, your patterns, how you can stop them effectively, and how you can act and live in a situation that is best for all, for you and for all.
Thanks, Peter. Yes, absolutely. It's up to us to change the story, right? It's up to us to change our destiny and our present and consequently our future. And as you were saying, it's so obvious sometimes to point out and to say that that's the problem. And then we see like people blaming others when in fact what we forget is ourselves, is who we are. It's actually, there's a very interesting blog that I will also add into the description that was written by Marlene Vargas del Razo. And she was actually bringing the point of this God that exists, also this creator in the movie. It resembles not only men, but if we think about our minds, like these inner conversations that we have inside ourselves, this back chat, these judgments that we create and that we define ourselves as. So if we look at that, then we know, okay, if that is also being part of the problem, that is exactly what I can change it in myself, and it's in my own power. So it's a point of self-empowering who we are to actually redefine our nature, redefine what is right, what is wrong, and redefine life on Earth and life in coexistence. And just talking about Marlon, we actually had a comment now, so I'm going to just select it. And so we have a question from Marlon, and saying, Noah disobeys what God had commanded him to do. That representing disobeying the law of God, and in our case, disobeying our mind, our known ways. Have you experienced a similar moment in your process of disobeying your mind and stepping out from a consequence? Valentin, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, sure. So this is exactly the Desteni I Process main point, that we are to stop out of our minds and not to follow what the mind is telling us. Because the whole agenda of the mind is only to keep us in the separation from the reality and to generate energy for its own existence. And it has to create conflict. And this is the main point about understanding what the mind is and what is their agenda. So when one understands this, then there is really no point anymore in participating in the mind, trying to convince you that it has something important to tell you, that it is all-knowing, that you must listen, because if not, you will miss something very important. What is being actually missed when listening to the mind is actually living here, actually observing the physical reality and the consequences that we are creating with our practical living within our physical bodies. The mind is energy, and whatever the mind is creating within the imagination, it has not any practical consequence on this physical reality. But if we get distracted by the mind and live in the mind, in imagination, and do not care what are our physical consequences of our actions, then we are destroying this reality. We are acting irresponsibly. We do not consider how other beings are experiencing the consequences of our actions. We only care about how we feel, and the feelings are all self-created, are created within the mind. So the mind is blinding us with these thoughts, with these feelings, with these energies, and so we cannot see what is the actuality of our actions. So the cool point would be to stop following the mind, to get out, to birth yourself from the physical, to live here practically, to be with your full awareness and take responsibility for all your actions. This would be the solution.
Thanks, Valentin. That's a very interesting point. And actually, when you were saying, answering to Marlon's question, when you mentioned about being here, actually the word that comes up for me is if you're not here, you're in fear, which is a very similar word but means very different meanings. And as an example, at some point in my life, and sometimes often, I do fear, or I have this energy of fear, and in my mind, all my thoughts go into that to justify the fear. So for me, to stepping out of it and to actually recognizing where the fear is coming from and how can I tackle that by understanding and then applying solutions, then it seems that the mind is not shutting down. It's like always coming up with new thoughts and new images, new ideas for me to consider to still justify that until I have to actually take a decision which is not going into the energy and to look at things in common sense. So for example, Marlon, that was a point of me disobeying my mind because my mind was just going into fear. And what I did was to actually understand, like, why is this fear coming from? And very often fear comes from the unknown or that which that I don't understand. So what I have been applying is to ask questions and to try to find information so that there's no reason to have fear because I know what's going on. I know what my options are. And it's so easy, it's so interesting to see how that energy kind of and it doesn't exist no more because I'm not feeling it. I'm taking a different route that I would normally take. And obviously also applying the tools of self-forgiveness and forgiving that energy that is building up within myself. So very interesting comment, Marlene, and question. Thank you so much for that. And maybe Peter, would you like to add anything to it?
Oh, that's difficult because I guess that we covered most of the things. I can eventually come up with practical situations where I live those moments myself. Typically is that when I travel from work to home, for instance, and I do it on the bicycle, I tend to escape in the mind, and but my practical point there is to try to be as much as possible in the moment, in here and now, just enjoying the fact that I'm riding on the bicycle in the nature, looking at the trees, the birds, and enjoying the wind that's touching my skin, etc., instead of popping back in the mind and thinking of all the experiences I had after a day of work in my job. So that is, you can train yourself in order to recognize what is the mind and what is not, what is here the physical. And what you told about and here is actually something that it has to do with this point, because very often it feels very fearful to be right here because the mind tells you that you're not prepared to that, just for the simple reason that the mind eventually is not quick enough to react to all the things that happen in the moment. And if you project that to a specific situation, like talking in a hangout like this one. You might have the fear not knowing what to say when you have a question comes into your direction, just because your mind starts thinking, oh my god, what am I going to say? If I'm sure about what I'm going to say, is this the answer I want to give, etc. No, just skip that and trust yourself, because you know all the things you can say. There is no reason to have fear there. So that is maybe my interpretation of how to look into this point.
Thanks, Peter. Yeah, I understand what you say, because as you said, we train our minds, so we understand, okay, is this fear actually supporting me, or is it actually separating me? Even now here on the Hangout, like to understand where those fears coming from, what is this God mind is telling me to not do or to do, and to for example, write about it. I actually myself had to write a few times about the Hangout, so that when I'm here, I'm present, and all the other thoughts are stopped, and I'm focused on what I'm doing. And especially if you are riding your bicycle, there are consequences for yourself.
Yeah. Actually, I had a situation yesterday where I was in my mind, and I just went into the mud beside the road, and I had to make a emergency stop. And I thought, oh, okay, this is a bad thing, because I was just in the mind. I don't know what I was thinking about, but I was not paying attention and not aiming properly on the road. So. But that was a wake-up point. Okay, dragging me back into the physical. Okay, be careful, because you have to be here, and not somewhere in the mind. Yeah, it was a real cool experience, actually, with no consequence.
Very cool, Peter. And actually, the mind, and there's many ECOF interviews that talk about that, which I'll also add the links on the description for the viewers. That actually works almost as a guideline for us, because we see the points that the mind is showing, and instead of taking it personally and thinking, yes, that's the future, or that's going to happen, it's more like, okay, this is what my mind is showing me. What can I do to change that? Or why am I creating this again? Why am I so addicted to these images and these ideas that I have created? And instead of actually defining as disobedience, it's more of creation. How are we recreating ourselves and our daily lives? And in that case, you're journeying on a bicycle, or any other relationships that we have, so that we move from the consequences to actually change the outcome for a best solution for ourselves. So I'm just going to take this question, and if anyone else has any other comments or questions, feel free to send it to us. And in the meantime, I'm going to go to another point here for Valentin. So you know in the movie when Noah visits the city of men, and he sees himself, and he realizes that the weaknesses that he was thinking about the others was not only about the others, but it existed within him. And that was even more disconcerting for him, because then he realized that it was actually himself who also had those patterns in him. And this is the dark side that we tend to avoid to face, because we don't want to face the reality of who we are and who we have become. So, Valentin, my question is, why is this point of self-honesty so essential in our own process of rebirthing from the physical?
Yeah, this is a cool point, because if Noah had the task to be the image of the better version of the people, of the man, that would continue after all others would be annihilated, if he was able to see within himself the same patterns that he was seeing in other people's, how would having a flood and this annihilation of the humanity, how would this benefit in any kind on this planet? So important is not to look just outside for other people, to look what are their problems, imperfections, and to see what we can improve within ourselves, and what we are actually projecting outside towards other people. So the important is to start with self, not to wait for others, for some other solutions, but to be the example of the solution. And when we turn our sight, our eyes within, and we can then start to open layer by layer and see what we have copied, many of these patterns that are not supporting from our parents, from the past. And then we can stop the past by stopping the patterns that are within us as the recording of the past, so that we can live here in this moment in equality. So the past is within us, within our patterns, within our behavior patterns. And if we want to stop the past, we have to change, to become firstly aware of these patterns within us, then to analyze them, to see what are supporting, what are not, and to remove those that are not supporting with self-forgiveness. So then we can have a clean slate and become a better version of ourselves, and also then educate other people by our own example. Because there is difference between teaching someone with just information and teaching someone with our own example, because others can see that you have not realized something that you are teaching. So important is for every teacher to firstly clean our own mind patterns.
Thanks, Valentin. I was exactly thinking about that, the point of education and the importance of rethink about things and to actually give it a new meaning to those definitions that we have, and they're actually conditioning our actions to still repeating what we call the sins of the fathers, because that says also our belief system. And going now to that second point in our conversation about how our belief systems are so ingrained within us that we think that this is the way it is, this is the way that God has made us to believe that it is, and that our only solution is to be these victims and to accept this evil nature within us and not doing anything about it, when exactly rebirthing from the physical is letting go of those belief systems and trusting ourselves that we are able to reach our fullest potential, which means that we're able to know the other, we're able to educate another as ourselves, and ultimately that we are able to recognize our mistakes, forgive them, and create something different that is the best for us. And Peter, we have about a minute to go. And one last point regarding this movie was that this idea of creating an ark to save, in this case, the animals, but like a very small part of humanity, of the beings on this earth, leaving everyone else behind. It actually reminds me of those modern movies where you have a spaceship that saves humanity, like a very small elitist group as part of the humanity, and leaving the rest of people on the planet to die. So why is that we're still bringing these ideas instead of considering each and every single being?
Well, from my point of view is that there's always something in ourselves that thinks that we are more special than others, and or we believe that we are not the special ones, but the elite is, and the elite is going to leave us alone on the planet. That is actually something you see very strongly here, that humanity is believing in this point, and we cannot change that. So there's a belief, definitely a strong belief in that, and that we have to wait until we are saved. So only the chosen ones will be saved. So who are those? Nobody knows. and we are hoping, we are waiting, we are doing nothing. We are watching those movies where they are suggesting that there are solutions coming towards us, and we are just fearfully waiting for those solutions, hoping that we are the chosen ones. On the other end, we know that there is the elite that is trying to save their own asses and doing anything to make that possible. So it's very complex, and I'm not sure if looking at those points we are able to give a straight answer to how to solve this situation. So the only solution there is actually is to start looking at ourselves, because the solution is there, here in ourselves, and we only have to allow ourselves to see that. And that is maybe the most important point. Also, going back to having watched this movie, if you still have questions, okay, how are we going to solve this issue? Because the movie is not solving any issues. That is starting to look at ourselves and well, walk in the process, and that is possible to do that. Well, I guess that you're going to finish with that point, following the dip light course, etc. So that is, yeah, that's my point of view.
Thanks, Peter. Yes, Vanten, do you have to add anything else before we close this hangout today?
No, it's okay.
Okay, perfect. Okay, thank you so much, guys. Just adding what you were saying, Peter, and to conclude, indeed, it's so easy for us also to actually look at the elite as the ones that are saved. But actually, in fact, we, as we were saying, we have the tools to save ourselves, first from our own minds, and then through education to find solutions to us, to develop ourselves, to understand how the world works, to educate ourselves, and to realize that this oneness and equality as principles must be lived by each and every single one of us if we are to actually live in harmony in this world. And this is not only about the human relationships, but also about animals. And this point of equality to the rest of nature, and to at the same time be very practical about it, to not go into the positive, because it's also a way of kind of not facing what we have done thus far, which are very tough things that we have to face in terms of our creations thus far, but at the same time making sure that we're not taking our responsibility away, because if we are here, this is the moment we are all together on this earth, and it is also our responsibility to make sure that our creation is better than what has been done so far. So, and then eventually we're not going to destroy our planet, so there is no need for us to live in an ark, because we're not going to destroy it in the first place. So there are many ways for us to prevent any kind of Armageddon that we would think, or these movies will start showing, and to move from the fear to actually being here and to apply practical solutions. Cool. So I think that's all for now. We didn't receive any more questions, so thank you, Marlon, for participating. And yeah, next week, Victor is going to bring another movie to discuss. Bye, guys. See you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.